What if I told you the biggest threat to the price you pay for gas isn't a war in the Middle East, but a quiet decision made in Washington, D.C., a decision that affects a type of oil you've probably never even heard of? It turns out, U.S. refineries have a hidden dependency, and a single policy move could put their entire supply in jeopardy. This is the story of how a specific kind of oil could cause some serious pain at the pump, and it's a threat that's already built right into our system. That number is always there, isn't it? Staring back at you from the side of the road. $4, $5, sometimes even more. The price of gasoline is a constant nagging presence in our lives. It dictates budgets, shapes travel plans, and for millions of us, it's a source of real financial anxiety. When it spikes, we all feel it. It's like an instant, unavoidable tax on just living your life. And whenever those prices jump, we get the same familiar list of villains. There's a conflict flaring up somewhere in the world. OPEC, the big cartel of oil-producing nations, decided to tighten the spigot. Or maybe it's just the classic excuse, the annual switch to summer blend gasoline right as driving season kicks off. These explanations are simple, easy to digest, and repeated so often by news anchors and politicians that we just accept them as the whole story. And they do make a certain kind of sense. A global commodity is going to have a global price, influenced by global events. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That story is dangerously incomplete. While we've been looking overseas for the source of our gas price woes, we've ignored a much deeper vulnerability, one that's woven directly into the steel and concrete of our own energy infrastructure. It's a fragility not of total supply, but of specific design. And to understand it, we first have to unravel a popular and misleading myth. The idea that because America is an energy superpower, it must be energy independent. You've heard the slogans, the triumphant declarations of energy dominance. And it's true, the United States is, by a wide margin, the largest producer of crude oil in the world. We pull more oil out of the ground than Saudi Arabia or Russia. Over the last decade and a half, a technological revolution in shale oil, happening in places like the Permian Basin in Texas, has completely rewritten the global energy map. So, a logical question follows. If we produce more oil than anyone on the planet, why are our gas prices still so volatile? Why are we still so vulnerable to the whims of other countries? And why on earth do we still import millions of barrels of crude oil every single day? It seems like a massive contradiction. The problem is that the public conversation we have about oil is almost always about quantity. How much we produce, how much we import. But the real story, the one that holds the key to our hidden vulnerability, isn't about how much oil we have, it's about what kind. Imagine you own the world's most advanced, efficient diesel-powered truck. It's a marvel of engineering. But one day you find yourself in a country that only sells gasoline. You're literally surrounded by fuel, but your engine can't use any of it. You're stranded. In a simplified sense, that's the precarious situation the United States has built for itself. We have an abundance of one type of fuel, but a vast, critical part of our industrial engine is chemically designed to run on another. This mismatch is the central, unacknowledged secret of the American energy system. To really get this, you have to know that not all crude oil is created equal. When oil comes out of the ground, it exists on a spectrum. The two most important labels are light versus heavy and sweet versus sour. Light crude is thin and flows easily, almost like water. Heavy crude is the opposite. It's dense, viscous, and thick like molasses. At the same time, sweet crude has low sulfur content, making it easier to process. Sour crude has high sulfur, which makes it more corrosive and complicated to refine. The American shale boom, the source of our superpower status, overwhelmingly produces light, sweet crude. It's high quality, valuable, and pretty easy to turn into gasoline. This is the oil we have tons of. But here's the billion-dollar disconnect. Decades ago, long before the shale revolution, American refinery companies made a huge strategic bet. Back then, it looked like global supplies of that good, light, sweet crude were dwindling, while heavy, sour crude from places like Venezuela, Mexico, and especially Canada was cheap and seemed endless. So, U.S. companies poured billions into building and retooling some of the world's most complex refineries, especially along the Gulf Coast and in the Midwest. These advanced facilities are equipped with specialized, expensive units called cokers and hydrotreaters. This gear is specifically designed to break down the thick, sludgy, high-sulfur molecules of heavy, sour crude and transform it all into gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. These refineries were optimized for a very specific diet. Trying to feed them the light, sweet crude from Texas would be incredibly inefficient. It's like trying to make a gourmet meal with the wrong ingredients. You might get something edible, but you've wasted the potential of your world-class kitchen. It would lead to lower fuel production and higher costs. And while our own domestic heavy crude output has remained relatively stable, it's nowhere near enough to feed these massive, specialized refineries. So, to keep them running, we have become critically dependent on imports. And one country, our northern neighbor, is the undisputed king of heavy crude. The single largest source of the heavy, sour crude that American refineries are built for is the oil sands of Alberta, Canada. This is the absolute lifeblood of our complex refining system. Every day, a river of millions of barrels of Canadian crude flows south into the U.S. It's not a luxury, it's an essential ingredient. In recent years, Canada has supplied a staggering 52 to 60% of all crude oil imports into the United States. For the refineries in the Midwest, known as PADD 2, nearly all of their imported oil, we're talking over 95%, comes from Canada. This flow is carried by a vast, intricate network of pipelines. The most important of these is the Enbridge mainline system, which can move over 3 million barrels of oil every single day across the border and into the American heartland. This creates an incredibly ironic situation. The United States, the world's biggest oil producer, exports millions of barrels of its own high-quality light crude because we don't have enough of the right kind of refineries for it. At the same time, we import millions of barrels of lower-quality heavy crude from Canada because a critical part of our refining infrastructure is addicted to it. For decades, this arrangement worked just fine. Canada had limited ways to refine its own oil, and a pipeline system built almost exclusively to serve the U.S., giving it no other real customers. The U.S. got a cheap, reliable source of heavy crude from a stable, friendly neighbor. But the ground is shifting. With the completion of the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline in 2024, Canada now has a major pipeline to its own Pacific coast. For the first time, this gives them the ability to ship their crude on tankers to growing markets in Asia or even to refineries in California. They are no longer a captive supplier. That new pipeline is more than just infrastructure, it's leverage. So, how does this hidden dependency become a full-blown crisis? It starts not with a bomb, but with a pen. Imagine a future U.S. administration gets into a bitter trade dispute with Canada. Looking for leverage, the White House announces a strategic review of all cross-border energy permits, or maybe slaps a new tariff on heavy crude imports. One executive action, one move. In the past, Canada might have had to grin and bear it. But now, they have options. They have the Trans Mountain Pipeline and access to the whole Pacific market. In response, the Canadian government could retaliate. They could slow-walk export licenses or simply encourage their producers to sell those barrels to higher-paying customers in Asia, diverting them away from the American Midwest. This is when the crisis would start. Suddenly, those highly specialized refineries in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio are starved of their feedstock. They can't just flip a switch and start processing light Texas crude. It would be a technical nightmare. Their entire system is built for heavy molecules. Running the wrong crude would slash their efficiency, change the type of fuel they could make, and might even force them to shut down for costly retooling, a process that would take billions of dollars and years to complete. This creates a catastrophic bottleneck inside the United States. Even if the world is swimming in oil, it doesn't matter if you can't refine it into gasoline where you need it. The supply of the finished fuels that actually go into your car would plummet. Could your gas price actually triple overnight? That kind of instant jump is dramatic, but the effect would feel just as fast. We have real-world examples of what happens when just one refinery goes down. In the summer of 2024, unplanned outages in the Midwest caused gas prices in Chicago to spike more than 20% above the U.S. average. Now imagine that on a national scale. A systemic starvation of dozens of our country's most important refineries. A price spike of 50 cents, $1, or even more would feel like it happened overnight. It could trigger panic buying and drain regional fuel supplies in days. And it would all stem from a political dispute that severed an artery we never even knew was essential. America's status as an energy superpower is, in many ways, a fragile illusion. It's a story we tell ourselves that masks a deep structural flaw. Our incredible production of high-quality crude oil hides the fact that our industrial backbone, our refining sector, was built for a different era and a different kind of oil. We have engineered a critical dependency on a single supply chain from a single country. For years, that dependency felt safe because our supplier had no other choice. Today, that is no longer true. The real threat to the price you pay at the pump isn't just a tanker blocked in some distant strait. It's a political spat on the 49th parallel. It's the stroke of a pen in Washington and a retaliatory decision in Ottawa. The vast pipeline network connecting our nations is a marvel. But its integrity is ultimately guaranteed by political goodwill, not by steel. As long as our most advanced refineries are chemically dependent on an oil we don't produce in sufficient quantities, the price you pay for gasoline will remain a hostage. The quiet threat is no longer about geology or engineering. It's about politics. And the question isn't if this vulnerability will be tested, but when. If you found this breakdown valuable and want to understand the hidden forces shaping our world, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more deep dives just like this one. Thanks for watching.